Hello, 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 everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight, we have a first time topic for Kidney Stories 2, Silent Rejection. And we're going to be talking to our friends Shane Moore and Michelle Recendez. Michelle is a clinical transplant social worker. She will talk to us tonight about two types of rejections: clinical acute rejection, the traditional type, and silent rejection, the earliest form of rejection that can go undetected by normal post-transplant blood work. Before this time, only a biopsy could detect silent rejection, but now a new product from TGI called OmniGraf can do the job. It is a simple blood test versus a severe surgical invasive procedure like a biopsy. Also, we have Shane Moore, a kidney transplant patient and a transplant coordinator who has been a kidney patient since the year 2000 and was transplanted in 2015. He tested on a lark for kidney rejection after his fifth kidney transplant anniversary in the year 2020, only to learn that he was in possible silent rejection. More studies were done and a biopsy to determine, in fact, that he was in silent rejection. He currently uses the OmniGraf product. A lot of ground to cover tonight, so a short introduction. We're going to be making references to certain conversations and websites and things of that nature. As you know, your Uncle Jim always puts those things in the comments to the original broadcast for you, and they will be streaming across the screen as we're talking. So please give a warm welcome to our guests, Michelle Recendez and Shane Moore. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing
I'm
well,
doing
thanks, Jim.
well. Thanks for
Great.
having us, Jen. Great to see
Oh,
you again, Shane.
Absolutely,
thank you for
always,
being
Michelle.
here. I really appreciate it. A great topic that we have to talk about tonight. I want to make sure our audience is aware. So, did I state everything correctly in the introduction? Let's start with Michelle.
You did. Thank you. So
Shane,
again,
did I get that? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Michelle.
oh, thanks, Jen. Yeah, so I'm a former transplant social worker. I'm sure many of you recipients and or donors who may be listening have worked with a clinical transplant social worker, and a lot of it was the pre-evaluation to help assist you getting on the list, and the discharge planning. That was another big part. So I worked at Rush University in Chicago, Loyola in Chicago, and New York Presbyterian in New York City. And then I decided it was time to go to this other side where I could help patients, proactively kind of look for rejection or potential episodes of rejection. So it's really rewarding in a different way to be part of this side. So thanks again, Jim, for having us.
Oh, no worries. Shane, did I get everything right? Did I get your dates right this time?
You did, Uncle Jim. I appreciate it. Hello, everybody.
Great, great. Um, let's start with Michelle again. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your educational experience, and your employment history.
Definitely. So I grew up in wonderful Green Bay, Wisconsin. I will admit I'm a huge Packer fan. So for those of you who don't like Aaron Rodgers or the Packers, I respect it, but I am born and raised Green Bay. And then I went to St. Mary's College, which is a sister school of Notre Dame. So I'm also a huge Notre Dame football fan. Go to all the games. We're in Chicago now. Left New York, so that's kind of part of my fun pastime. I was educated there with my bachelor's in social work. I was able to work in a liver transplant internship at Loyola in Chicago, and then luckily was able to get a job in liver kidney transplant at Rush, working with pre and post transplant patients, and then was fortunate to get a position at New York Presbyterian doing living donor advocate and as well as living donor social worker. So I'm passionate about transplant and then especially my kidney transplant patients.
Okay. Shane, tell us a little bit about where you grew up, your educational experience, and your employment history.
Okay. I grew up in East Texas, so it's about 30 minutes from the border of Louisiana. There's a bigger town called Shreveport that it's close to. I grew up there, lived there, went to college there as well in East Texas Baptist University, and got my nursing degree there. The reason I became a nurse was through all the life events that everybody will soon to find out. That's what made me go into nursing, and moved to Houston. And then after being in Houston for a while, I transitioned from ICU to a few other places, and then eventually became a liver coordinator. About 5.5 years ago, I moved up to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and where I work now at one of the hospitals as a heart transplant coordinator.
Great. Great. So we got a transplant coordinator with us tonight. That's excellent.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm going to go with Michelle for a little bit here, Shane, but I haven't forgotten you, okay? All right. Michelle, talk to us a little bit about your position with Transplant Genomics, what it is that you do, and your experiences at work.
Thank you for asking. So essentially what my role here is, I'm the liaison around the country with all the coordinators and physicians, and I work to help manage some of the managed care things. So like say you have commercial insurance and perhaps, it doesn't want to cover it. Well, we can work with your commercial insurance to try to get your test covered. Right now, Medicare covers at 100%. That's part of my role. I also work with marketing, as I'm doing tonight. So I get to help present education, symposiums, go around the country, meet physicians, coordinators, and patients. For example, I don't know if some of your followers were at Transplant Games in San Diego. I was just there recently and had the best experience meeting patients, having them share their stories, getting to interact with them as I did when I was in the clinic, in the hospital, back in person again. So for me, this role is wonderful because I get to work with the same doctors and coordinators times 100 and still get to be connected with patients.
Okay. Michelle, talk to us a little bit about the company, Transplant Genomics. What does the company do, and what does it do in general for kidney patients?
So the goal of our company is to give patients who may always be looking or needing surveillance. Our hope is to not have patients always need a biopsy or a rising creatinine to show that there's something going on with their kidney. Our test, called OmniGraf, the main purpose of this test is to show the earliest form of potential rejection. So what it does is uses gene expression, 120 genes in your body, and then it also uses something called cell-free DNA. And cell-free DNA is a product that's released when the transplanted organ is injured or might be showing early signs of injury. So this allows your physician to be proactive as opposed to reactive. So they can get this test with a 6 ml of blood, a simple blood draw, which 6 mLs, I'm sure so many of your patients and people on here, everyone has had so many blood draws. This is one simple test that you can get results back in a few days, and you're getting not just gene expression, and you're not getting just cell-free DNA, which some tests offer as well. You're getting the most accurate, earliest form to detect rejection, subclinical silent rejection that is not giving you symptoms yet. You're not feeling tenderness. You're not swollen. You're not feeling sick. You don't have a fever. So it's before your doctor or your labs can even detect that, or your own body perhaps.
Okay. And if someone wanted to find a TGI's website, I have it listed at https://transplantgenomics.com/about. Does that sound correct, Michelle?
You got it. Correct. And at the end, I'm going to put my email up. I don't know if you have it, but if any patients or recipients want to contact me, I could get them connected with the correct medical science liaison and team in their area if they're interested in testing.
Great. Because no, I didn't put it up. I didn't have your permission, so didn't want to be a bad Uncle Jim. So, all right, Michelle, please tell us, why should all kidney transplant recipients be aware of the possibility of rejection?
Well, first of all, the earliest, if you detect rejection or potential rejection, right, you have the chance of saving the kidney. The longer rejection goes on, chronic rejection, which is more likely to happen, post 1 year out. Your kidney, the injury, that the inflammation, that continuing suffering of the health of the organ, it's becomes more challenging for your physician and care team to save. So when you can see the potential of what's happening before there's any lab indicators, that's the very best way to go about it. I would definitely 100% recommend every patient to look into this. Because if you can detect it earlier, your physician can, for example, change your immunosuppression, can look into ways to protect the kidney before the creatinine is actually rising. So there's a lot of really good options out there. And that's why I'm proud to work here, and I love working with these patients and their physicians and coordinators. They just have so many other options now. It's not just a biopsy. Biopsies are invasive. Biopsies can be risky. You can injure the kidney during a biopsy. And what's interesting is about 25% of transplant patients actually have subclinical acute rejection before it's picked up. And this is a fact. Completely stable patients will show that they're actually having some early forms of rejection. So early intervention is absolutely key. And actually 35% of patients will experience silent rejection in the first 2 years post-transplant. So it even goes higher, and that's without any indicators. That's just picked up on a common biopsy, like for cause biopsy. Or not cause biopsy.
Okay. Shane, couple of medical questions, and you're our medical guy tonight. Our immune systems are designed to be protective, so they treat our transplanted organ like an intruder, like a cold germ or a bacteria or a virus. Can you explain how that works in simple terms for us?
Sure. Imagine our transplanted organs as a foreign invader. And Uncle Jim, how far in depth do you want me to go as far as, is it like the medications or how our body responds to it?
How our body responds. Real simple, Shane.
Sure. So imagine, like Uncle Jim said a little bit earlier, we have a foreign body that, is a blessing to us because somebody gave a part of themselves or potentially died for it, to be able to be an organ donor, right? And as an amazing gift that is, our bodies don't know that. And we take medications because, we have this gift of life, the way our body responds to that. One of the medications is imagining like somebody breaking into your house. One of the medications keeps you from recognizing burglars coming in. Another medication keeps you from calling for help. And then another medication just slows your reaction time down. So it's able for our bodies, and in a roundabout way, is to slow our bodies down to not recognize that threat. It's a very oversimplification of the medicines, but it kind of helps understand like how these medications go along with helping our bodies preventing rejection in it.
Okay. Shane, true or false? Common signs of rejection might include fever, pain, flu-like symptoms, tenderness, swelling in the kidney area, weight changes, decrease in urine, and fatigue. Are those true statements?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Much, when you go into rejection, you're going into kidney failure. It's the same thing because our kidney isn't working well. And there's going to be a decrease in urine output. You may have some fluid retention. Your weight's going to go up. All of the symptoms that if you're, have had a transplant before you've either went on dialysis or before you had your transplant, it's those same exact symptoms you were having before. Your electrolytes, as far as like potassium, may start going up. Obviously, your creatinine typically starts going up as well. It's very rare if it doesn't. But you start having those same exact symptoms and same exact labs start to show up when you're in rejection.
Okay. Back to Michelle. Michelle, I understand there are two types of rejection: clinical acute rejection and silent rejection or subclinical rejection. Can you talk to us a little bit about the difference between those two kinds of rejections?
Yeah, certainly. And Shane can definitely back this up as a coordinator. So when we're looking at subacute rejection, we're looking at the body before the labs respond, for example, before the body showing injury. And the goal of our test, OmniGraf, is to pick up that before the injury is actually occurring in the kidney. And our test, OmniGraf, looks at not only the cell-free DNA, which I know is probably, to me, before I started working here, I was like, what's cell-free DNA? But cell-free DNA is a byproduct. It's a product that's excreted by the organ when it's injured. So the organ's not functioning optimally. So that's going to start coming out in your body first. And that's one part of our test. So you'll see that on a rise, and that's a sign there could be something going on, not 100%, there could be. And then when you see our other test, TrueGraf, that looks for gene expression. And we have 120 genes that are analyzed with the same test, with the cell-free DNA, that will also be an indicator. What we tell our physicians is, look at this as a tool. It's a wonderful tool to use and utilize as part of your usual examination of patients. But if your physician wants to put you on a protocol, for example, and check this every month, every 3 months, if you're high risk, he may have his own protocol, but it's something that can be put in the toolbox to make sure your kidney's functioning healthy before it's not, before you're in a chronic rejection episode or something where it's much more serious, and it's something that it can't necessarily be treated with early intervention.
Okay. Just so I understand, acute clinical rejection, that can be caught with the blood test. It'll show your creatinine rising. Mm-hmm. Subacute clinical rejection, silent rejection, your blood test could look great, mm-hmm. but you might be in rejection anyway.
Exactly.
Are those fair statements?
Yes, correct, Shane? You agree?
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Okay.
That's the beauty of
go
this.
ahead, Shane.
To break up the two, we're talking about two different types of rejection. One is cellular, and then two is antibody-mediated rejection, or the silent rejection. The subacute clinical that we just talked about is part of that antibody-mediated rejection. Cellular rejection is another type of rejection, and how that happens is typically within the first year. Just in that process, again, even though you're taking the right meds and doing all the right things, it can still happen, but it's a higher likelihood that it won't happen. Also, another thing that can happen is if you quit taking your meds, you have a higher chance of going into cellular rejection. So it's two separate main arms that we look at, and then the cellular is the one that I just talked about not taking your meds, and typically happens within the first year. And the antibody-mediated rejection has two separate arms too. In general, you have the subclinical acute, which happens what we just talked about without showing any signs of like your creatinine or anything. And then there's the other branch that shows the clinical, antibody-mediated rejection, where you're seeing the rise in creatinine and everything else.
It's really about being proactive. That's how I look
Absolutely.
at our company.
Absolutely.
And Transplant Genomics. There are some tests out there that will be able to view your kidney as it is rejecting with cell-free DNA. But since we can utilize gene expression and cell-free DNA with OmniGraf, you're getting a really solid early view. So your physician has so many different tools to work with before there's actual real significant injury to the kidney. And I think for anyone who's at a transplant, and then perhaps avoiding biopsy if your physician does protocol biopsy every 3 months or however they do it, we can assist with that. And that could be another just option to use, or maybe eliminate the biopsy.
Okay. Michelle, one of the things that surprised me that I saw in some of the materials from TGI, silent rejection occurs more often than most of us think. Can you talk about that a little bit?
For sure. So 25% actually in the first year, which is kind of fascinating. And 25% of patients are going to have it, 35% within the first 2 years. So it's something that I think it's something that it's not that the physicians aren't intelligent enough. It's just, how are you going to be aware of this all the time? We've had studies to show that this is a very common occurrence, and it's there. It's simply there. And why not try to avoid that so it doesn't turn into chronic rejection or something that becomes worse if you get a virus or an illness where it's just escalated. So you want to keep your kidney in we call it, so like a happy mode. So it's not overreact, your body, your immune system. So it's not overreactive, it's not underreactive, it's just in a quiescence, it's calm, it's happy. And that can often happen by adjusting immunosuppression, adding other drugs if needed before it becomes really bad. And then you're on the list for another transplant. That's what we want to avoid. You've all been through so much. You've seen so much. You've had more blood draws than anyone, or maybe biopsies. And our goal is to help avoid that, and give you confidence that your kidney is working. We can rule out negatives. We can rule out the kidney is not working well, and we can rule in that the kidney is working well.
Okay. Shane, let's talk a little bit about previously, silent rejection could only be detected by an invasive biopsy procedure. Now, you're the only guy on the panel tonight that's had a biopsy. So can you tell us, what is a biopsy procedure? Why is it invasive? And why is OmniGraf preferable?
Sure. So I'm going to use my hands. Unfortunately, I talk with my hands a lot. So, our transplanted kidneys are typically in the groin. And I'm going to show you, imagine this is your kidney down here, and this is the top of your skin. How do we get from above here to down here? A needle, right? So what the physician does is take a really long needle, like a really long IV, and then they stick it down with like a sonogram machine or ultrasound machine, to make sure that they're not going to hit any arteries or anything that can cause a lot of bleeding. Because that's one of the risks of a biopsy, is hitting something that can cause a lot of bleeding and cause damage to the kidneys, right? That's what we want to avoid. So they take a really big needle, go down through your skin, go down and hit your kidney, and then they pull out several samples. This really big needle is hollow, and they can pull out some samples, and they send it to the pathology lab. Pathology are the physicians and specialists that look at the cells that they get from the biopsy to determine if there's any type of rejection. And they're actually looking at the nephrons, or the things that little magical pieces in our kidneys that help filter out and do all those things. They're looking at that under a microscope to see if there's anything that's starting to look bad. A lot of the like a degradation, or is starting to wilt, almost like a flower, that's causing some problems with the nephrons. And they can see that by looking at all that stuff with the biopsy.
Okay. Michelle, what are some of the complications that can arise from silent rejection?
Well, the worst thing is that it goes undetected, and then that silent rejection turns into chronic rejection, where your kidney then is in need of dire help. And so then your physician is looking at, some people may have been on specific medications, and like some like more invasive, depends if you have what kind of rejection it is. But the side effects aren't always pleasant for some of these medications. Beside biopsy, some of those are quite difficult to handle as well. When I worked inpatient in the hospital, even getting some of these things approved for patients was really challenging. Thymoglobulin, for example, various things. And it was hard on the family, the patient. They wanted to go home, and they were sitting there waiting. So I look at this as, well, gosh, it gives me an opportunity to see my kidney's still healthy. I don't have to wait for a rise in creatinine or other renal panels to know that there might be something wrong. And then at that point, my care team has to act urgently and quickly and find out what's going on. OmniGraf is a proactive test that can assess for injury before injury occurs. And that is something that before I, left hospital work, that, it wasn't really available yet. But now that we have this tool, if I were a patient and I was listening tonight, I would just consider asking about this option, and we're happy to just discuss it. We have plenty of medical science liaisons around the country, myself. We've got plenty of people who are educated enough to further educate physicians and your care team. Because the ultimate goal is protecting your kidney. We don't want you to have another transplant because early detection of rejection wasn't found.
Okay.
And you had to wait until a severe event occurred.
All right. And if people want to know more about silent rejection, they can go to the website getaheadofsilentrejection.com.
Yep.
Did I state that correctly?
That's correct.
All right. And Shane, would you agree with the statement that the sooner early silent rejection is ruled out, the better it is for kidney transplant patients?
Absolutely. We'll go into my story a little bit later, but the sooner that you can prevent, something from happening, I use the analogy, this test is like a smoke detector. You don't call the fire department when your house is already halfway burnt down. You want to call them before, right? And the longer that any kind of rejection is going on, the harder it is going to be to treat, because your body's already been reacting for quite a long time, that it's going to be harder to clear the rejection or bring, different numbers down. And your kidneys are like dominoes. What I mentioned before, the nephrons and stuff, the more that they get damaged, they have to lean on each other. So the more that they're leaning on each other, eventually that nephron's going to fail, then the next one's going to fail, and so on and so forth. So the sooner that this can be detected, the sooner that the treatment is, whether it's adjusting some medications, something simple, or unfortunately maybe having to have, further treatment as far as like some IVs or something similar to dialysis, whether it's plasma exchange. There's a lot of different forms of treatment. However, the sooner that you can check it, the sooner you treat it, the better it is.
Okay. Michelle, let's drill down a little bit on OmniGraf as a product.
Mm-hmm.
I read somewhere that it is a one-of-a-kind blood test that gives the earliest and most accurate view of your transplanted kidney's health by determining if it's at risk for rejection. Can you talk to us about the two biomarkers that are part of this and do such a wonderful job?
I'll make it simple, because I feel when I hear stuff that's so in-depth and boring and complicated, it kind of takes away from the real message. And so when I'm talking with a patient and I just want it to make sense and make it relatable, there are other biomarkers out there. There's a couple other companies that do this. They, at this moment, are looking simply at the cell-free DNA. And so cell-free DNA, like we talked about, shows there's injury to the organ. The graft is injured. It's already been injured. We have another tool in our kit that is gene expression. And our other test called TrueGraf analyzes 120 different genes in your body. Now, when some of these genes are off and not working and showing your immune system may not be working properly, it's going to populate and tell our lab, okay, this is off. So then we'll get the result back and send it to your physician and care team. And then they can see that in combination with the cell-free DNA that some of the other competitor, people we work with utilize, but we've got that extra tool in our box. So it gives you a little bit more, I would say, if I were a patient, comfort knowing, okay, you really have a good, solid result that your kidney's healthy. And I think that's the biggest message. If I were a transplant patient, I just want to know my kidney, my liver, my heart right now, we'll see where we go from here. But right now, those things are working. And you don't have to be concerned. I imagine when I would work with patients, we had support groups every week, and that was their biggest fear. It was the fear of the organ rejecting. And there's nothing you can do at night to comfort your mind. This test is one thing that can help comfort your mind. It's not 100% perfect, no test is, but it gives you at least when I look at it and talk to patients, peace of mind. And it's also in relation with visiting your physician, taking your meds, and, your regular labs as well. It's just the earliest form of detection, the earliest form right now in the market of detection.
Okay. Shane, talk to us a little bit. OmniGraf has advantages over an invasive biopsy. Can you talk to us about those advantages?
Absolutely. So as Michelle explained, we're looking at this test looks at two different things. If you don't mind, I'll explain a little bit about cell-free DNA and everything first. So what cell-free DNA is imagine Uncle Jim gave me a kidney transplant. Well, in our bloodstream, I'm gonna have my DNA, but I'm also gonna have Uncle Jim's DNA. The higher that Uncle Jim's DNA is in my bloodstream, the more likely something's going on. And looking, with the test, this is one of the tests that we can look at and like, hey, something's going on. And then adding in the gene expression part of it, it's like 120 witnesses to a crime saying, yeah, there's something going on as well. So those two things together are a huge factor in adding that on. I'm sorry, Uncle Jim, what was the second part?
Oh, you're doing good. The second part was about the advantages over biopsy.
Yes, sir. Sorry about that, everybody. So with a biopsy, imagine, our circled, and for just example, this circle is our kidney. And the biopsy, what that's going to do is they're only going to take certain pieces from different areas. Part of that problem is if there's a different area, let's say it's over here, but your rejection is starting a little up here, and they don't capture that in the biopsy, they can miss it. Also, it's invasive. They're taking a big needle, even though they're numbing the skin and everything. So it doesn't hurt as much in your kidney because it's been your new kidney was removed from somebody else. It doesn't have the nerves attached. So you don't necessarily feel it whenever the needle is going in and stuff. You can feel some pops and everything inside of your body reverberating, which it does feel weird. But it's a huge difference because you're looking at a collection. You're seeing how the body is working internally with the blood test. And we get blood tests done all the time, right? Whether we're on dialysis, whatever, you're getting your blood work done no matter what, because you're checking your anti-rejection medicines. So it's easy just to add that on, right? What's one more tube when you're having 11 already drawn, right? But the difference between this is sometimes it won't show up in a biopsy. And so where we are in the forefront of medicine is how do we incorporate these high levels? Do we, change up, the anti-rejection medicines? Do we need to do a few tweaks to, the person's meds to see if that helps out? Because you can measure this and see it go up and down. Yes, there are different factors that can cause those levels to go up and down. However, over time, we're looking at that level, see if it's staying straight or if there's dips and curves and what's going on with you when you ever have those tests drawn, or me whenever I have those drawn. Did I have a cold? Because that increased some of those numbers. But if everything is perfectly fine and there's something going on underneath, you're able to see that with the blood test a lot faster than it will show up a lot of times in the biopsy.
Okay. Michelle, let's talk a little bit. You mentioned something about clinical trials or studies, and I was watching my buddy Jonathan Traylor's broadcast, and I noticed that you talked about something called TRULO, TRULO, observational studies. Can you tell us a little bit about TGI and clinical trials or studies?
Definitely. So we'll be beginning more trials, because trials are what kind of give you the evidence to go forward for utilizing a product, right? And that's what gives everyone the desire to want to utilize it when they see positive results. TRULO was a study, is still going on. It will be concluding soon. We've had great results, but essentially it was using OmniGraf, cell-free DNA, just as Shane explained, as well as gene expression to see how patients responded to OmniGraf, our test that looks at both. So we have data in now, and I mean, it's quite impressive to see that people really can have reassurance that their kidney's doing well. So we will be starting new trials. And that's why I think it's important for patients that may not be familiar with us to contact us, get involved, contact myself, contact you. I'll get you hooked up with who's ever in your territory. I cover the entire country, and I work with every medical science liaison, every rep that works with doctors. And, we want you guys to have this satisfaction of knowing your kidney is happy. We call it quiescence, but it's really happy that your body's happy with the kidney and your kidney's happy with how the body's working together. So it's sort of this whole thing, and that's our goal. We don't want you to keep going through so many different procedures and waiting and wondering. But so yes, there will be more trials. At the moment, I have to hold off on it, but yes, there will be more going on, quite a bit more, and exciting things coming.
Okay. And just so people know that the website for the clinical trials that TGI does, that's in the comments to the broadcast. It's too long for me to kind of read to you, but you can find it in the comments to the broadcast. Michelle, let's talk about money, because there's always these issues with your insurance company and people that are uninsured or they're underinsured, prior authorization, Medicare or other coverage. How much out of pocket is this going to cost me? How do I investigate my benefits? Can you talk to us about Transplant Genomics Patient Financial Assistance Program?
For sure. This is always, and even when I worked in hospitals and clinics, one of the biggest things. You guys are already having so many out-of-pocket costs. It's crazy. And I worked with so many assistance programs as a social worker. We're similar to that. So we have so essentially Medicare Advantage will cover all of this. Medicaid as well, because contractually Medicaid patients are held harmless. They're allotted the test. Now with private insurance, we will work with your insurance. I am on that team, and I have three now actually, coworkers, Samantha, Morgan, and Madison, who will it's called a benefit investigation. They will look, and sometimes they find you have an insurance you didn't even know you had, or maybe you have Medicare secondary, you didn't even know you had it. And I, myself, and the other three girls will do everything we can to get it covered. And sometimes it's prior auth. I'm sure some patients have had prior auth done for other things. I have in my own life, not transplant related, but we want to do that. We can do it. And that's a huge part of what it is. I think every patient should be allotted this opportunity to be assessed for early rejection.
Okay, and I have a phone number I'd like to share for people that want to call in if they need help. It's 844-878-4723. That's 844-878-4723. And again, the website listing and the phone number are in the comments to this broadcast. So if you want to do the testing with OmniGraf and you're concerned about your insurance and money out of your pocket, you can access the website. You can call the phone number. You get a nice person like Michelle, and they'll help you out so we can get the mission accomplished.
100%. I work with the girls that would contact you, Sam, Morgan, and Madison, all day long. We're on the phone, emailing together. Our goal is to get as many patients this test as possible. We work with every insurance plan, and we want you to have this option. Again, you can email me personally after this. Uncle Jim's going to share it, or you can call the number, and Samantha is probably who'd pick up the phone. But we will take care of it. We will work with you that day. A lot of our assistance program follows similar things to maybe what you've had for like Prograf, Salsapt, Bella, like other sort of immunosuppressants. We do have additional things that can be helpful as well. So please reach out to us. We really want to work with every patient out there to give you guys some reassurance that your kidney's doing well.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. I'm going to talk to Shane a little bit now about his kidney history. And by the way, again, folks, Shane's told the story a couple times before. The links to those broadcasts are in the comments. I know he's talked to the AAKP, for example, and that's cool. I'm on their board of directors, so no conflict between groups here. We're trying to educate and raise awareness. So all of those things are in the comments. So if you want to check out Shane's prior statements, they're there. You can do that. Okay. All right, Shane, let's talk about your kidney history. Let's go back to when you were 19 years old. I understand that you were in some kind of a wreck during the year 2000. Can you tell us about the circumstances of that collision?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So me and some friends were on our way back. We had went to go eat, and we were in Shreveport, Louisiana, as I mentioned how close it is to my hometown. And we were coming up over a hill on the inner loop of Shreveport, and it's a darker area of town. There was not well lit and stuff. So we come up over a hill, and to us, it looked like two people were running across the road with flashlights dangling like this. So it looked like, two sets of something was happening. And as we approach, we see a car go up the embankment backwards, and we couldn't even get the OSH out, right? And what happened was a car hit a girl that turned off her lights because she ran out of gas and left her car in the slow lane. Instead of pulling over to the shoulder, she left her car in the slow lane. A car hit her and spun her into us. And because her lights weren't on, that's why they hit her. And because she didn't have her lights on, that's why we hit her. So her car was in the fast lane, and we hit her direct impact. And where we hit was directly in front of where I was sitting. So I received the full impact at that time. So seatbelt goes across, from your right shoulder to your left shoulder. And our spleen is kind of close to our stomach. And on impact, what happened was it had torn that spleen, and was emergently rushed to a hospital in Shreveport, Louisiana. And they tried to save it. They didn't want to take my spleen out at the time because they didn't want me to have a lower immune system or immunocompromised, because your spleen does a lot of work with your immune system, help protect your body and everything. And they tried to save it for about 7 days or so, about a week, and then eventually it ruptured.
Just so people get some idea of the force of this impact, it's my understanding that you were extracted from the car. The car was on fire. You got pulled out by bystanders, like just in the nick of time. Would that be a fair series of statements?
After the impact, yes, the car started to catch on the fire. There were some people that had saw the wreck and rushed up to us. A friend of mine that was driving, he had messed up his knee. His fiance that was behind me ended up breaking her femur, that long, our long leg bone. So everybody's screaming and freaking out. So they pull, I remember two gentlemen coming up to the car and opening the door, and I was taking off my seatbelt, and I started to lean out because I was starting to lose consciousness. So they pulled me out and laid me down, and they were helping my friends out of the car. And then the car started to further catch on fire and start to burn up and everything. So, by that time, EMS had arrived and everything. It was pretty fortunate that everything happened really quick, as we were close to EMS station and fairly close to the hospital. So some of the details, I was in and out of consciousness as far as the timing of a few things, but I remember, being put into the ambulance. I remember because with the impact, it had broken my right collarbone. So I remember bouncing around in the ambulance because they're very comfortable, right? And being taken to the hospital and going in and out of consciousness throughout the ER time that I had there. Then eventually going to the ICU.
Right. You mentioned that your spleen burst, there was internal bleeding. What hospital are we talking about, and how long were you in the hospital?
The total time I was in the hospital was just shy of a whole 30 days. I was taken to LSUS. I believe it's changed its name now. I believe it's Ochsner Hospital. But at the day that the impact happened, that was on a Saturday night, and it was right around Halloween. Whenever I was
Close to Halloween.
discharged from the hospital, right
Okay,
around Halloween. I think the day
this
before.
internal bleeding with your spleen. Can you talk to us about how it affected your organs, including your kidney?
Sure. So whenever imagine, like a water balloon, the overfilled water balloon, and that's what was happening. There was a lot of blood flow going into that spleen, and because that spleen had swollen, it was just building up like a balloon. And then whenever it did burst or rupture, all of that blood was leaking out into my body, into my, my stomach area and all of that. So because of that massive blood loss that kept happening, because the balloon burst, the blood just kept flowing, my body started shutting down. And that's what our bodies do to preserve itself, is start shutting down different organs. So it shut down my intestines, my kidneys shut down, and it was on its way up. But thankfully, they were able to stop the bleeding. But because of the massive bleeding and the shutting down of my kidneys were permanently damaged. And it was both kidneys. They work in tandem. Like whenever we get a blood test, it doesn't show you how's your left kidney doing or how your right kidney is doing. With our creatinine, it's a combination of both. So both were suffered from damage. And whenever I woke up from emergent surgery, I was on dialysis. And that's where my disease started at that moment. I never had a history of kidney disease. I didn't have any other risk factors like diabetes or high blood pressure or anything. I was in best of health, very active, 19-year-old. But then the wreck happened, which caused the kidney disease.
Okay. When you say you were placed on dialysis, I'm making an assumption that they put a catheter in your chest or in your neck, emergency type dialysis. They did not take the time to put in a fistula, for example.
No. And because, fistulas take a long time to cure or to be able to be used, what they did was put an emergent line in my groin and then eventually change it to my neck for reasons of infection and everything. So I had a line in my neck for about 2 months that we used.
Okay. And I understand you were on hemodialysis then, in-center hemodialysis, I'm assuming,
Yes,
for
sir.
2 months?
Yes, sir. In the hospital. And then whenever I got discharged, I went to the DeVita Center. That was in my hometown of Marshall that I did, treatments Monday, Wednesday, Friday with.
Okay. It's also my understanding that there came a point in time where you were able to stop dialysis. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Because of, a lot to do with my age, because I was 19, and it was right before my 20th birthday was when all of this happened. So because my kidneys had slowly recovered enough, I was able to get off of dialysis. And funny enough, my birthday is on November 29th, and I was born in 1980. So in the year 2000, November 29th, 2000, I went to see my nephrologist in Shreveport. We did blood tests, and I needed to have emergent dialysis that day. So I had dialysis on my birthday. And I had stopped for about
Been there and
2 to
done
3
that, my
weeks.
friend. When they took you off of dialysis, what did they tell you about the status of your condition? Something about only time will tell?
Yeah, absolutely. They said, we don't know how long you have. Of course, they went over a little bit of education and everything. Maybe it was still fresh for me, if you know what I mean, as far as from the wreck to when my kidneys started to recover. So there's a lot of things that were blurred, and some lack of education as well on things that I needed to do different and to help protect my kidneys. However, it was, good luck. We don't know how long this is going to last. It may be a few years, it may be a few months, it may be, a decade and a half almost, down the road. But because of all of those experiences, that's why I started, the track for nursing school and everything, because I needed to learn more, because I wasn't getting some of that education and wasn't hearing, honestly, if it was given to me, some of that education on things that I needed to do a little bit different. And after I became a nurse and met my nephrologist in Houston, I knew a lot more, and I also was able to change a lot of things that I did with my diet, where there was low protein for the longest, and then low potassium, low phosphorus before I had to go back on dialysis.
Okay. And it's my understanding that eventually you became a nurse in 2009. Is that correct?
2006 is when I graduated nursing school.
2006. Dad, Uncle Jim.
It's okay.
And I understand that you've worked in the ICU and that you've also worked as a transplant coordinator. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Whenever I graduated from nursing school, I worked on a tele floor for a little bit, but as soon as I got the opportunity to go to the ICU, I transitioned over to the ICU, where the home hemodialysis machine that I actually used at home was the same one that I had trained in the ICU. So a lot of, critically sick patients I took care of, and then eventually transitioned to a few different areas of heart specialties, because the ICU I worked in was a cardiac ICU. And then changed to the cath lab, and then I went to pediatric cath lab. And then after that, after my transplant, I changed hospitals and changed jobs. I became a liver transplant coordinator.
Okay. And after 14 years living with chronic kidney disease, it's my understanding that in 2014 you went back on dialysis. You've made reference to what I'm assuming is home hemodialysis. Is that right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And we started the workup process in April of 2014. And then in July of that same year, in 2014, my kidneys had slowly degraded and didn't work well enough to where I had to go on dialysis. And I used the next stage device at home. So I was able to run the machine with assistance from a family member. My wife at the time and my mother were there to help out and do whatever they needed to do. But it helped that I had the background information, because it can be a steep learning curve. That's why a lot of physicians tend to wait for a while before they transition patients over to home hemo.
Okay. I want to make sure I understand, Shane. Were you self-cannulating yourself? Were you sticking the needles in yourself, or were your helpers doing it?
I don't have any. I didn't have a fistula or a graft. I was using the technical term as a permacath. It's just, a really long, again, like
Gotcha.
what I had in the hospital was something that tunneled down, from my neck and everything, and went to my heart, so we could do the dialysis that way.
Okay. And they're always a little concerned about infection when you use that kind of device. Is that right?
Yes, sir, they are. And a lot of dialysis places want patients to transition over to a fistula or graft to be able to help weed that part of it out. That way that we're not having to worry about infection and everything, which is a huge concern whenever you're dealing with those things. The reason that my nephrologist was okay with that, not only was I a nurse, my ex-wife was a nurse as well. So we had the infection potential, definitely decrease with both of us. But also, I was, after having, several family members and stuff to be tested and a friend be tested, I was starting to get to that point of, if this one didn't work out, as far as if my friend that was being tested, if this didn't work out, then I was going to have to starting to look at a fistula or graft, because I was definitely almost at that point where it was going to be more of a potential problem than not.
Let's talk about the beginnings of your search for a kidney transplant and a matching donor. Where were you listed for transplant?
I was listed at Houston Methodist, which eventually I started to work there. But during that process, my nephrologist wanted me to go there. So he sent all my stuff there, and I had an amazing experience at Houston Methodist. The process, it feels like forever, not only to be worked up and approved, but also whenever you have, family members or having living donors donate to you, that process takes time, not only from the medical workup, but also, as Michelle well knows, the psychosocial aspect or the mental part of somebody donating, because there's a huge risk for everybody, so it's they do more testing more often for the donors than they do the recipients or the people donating the kidney versus the people getting the kidney or
Okay.
any digital organ.
When did you begin your search for a donor, Shane? Approximately when?
Around that time, my friends and my family we're all, very close. So everybody was aware that I had kidney disease and it was slowly getting worse. Throughout time, they could see me change, especially, throughout the end of 2013, 2014, because most of those people were there seeing me in the hospital where the wreck happened and were with me throughout this transitions in life and everything. So people knew. Thankfully, I didn't have to ask anybody. I had family members and friends that were volunteering, and it was a very humbling experience to be able to feel that love and to know that I had people that cared enough about me to want to give a part of themselves up.
Okay. It's my understanding that your mom and two cousins tested for you, but unfortunately they weren't suitable matches. Can you discuss that a little bit?
Sure. Whenever after the wreck and everything, they did a biopsy about 2.5 to 3 months afterwards, and they couldn't rule out a specific kidney disease, FSGS or focal segmental glomerular sclerosis. I know I went to medical or have some medical training. I can rattle some of those things off a little too easy, but it's a disease that could be potentially passed down from family members to family members. And so that's why they didn't want to use them, is because that was the potential that could have happened. And the reason why that was a high potential that I had that is because sclerosis is scarring. Well, I had some scarring because of the massive blood loss. That's why my kidneys weren't working. So because that could have been a potential, they didn't want to use a family member at some point, even though they were good immunologic matches. They wanted to use somebody a little further outside. So that's why my best friend Joey Sutton was picked to be a donor for me.
Okay. You've known Joey for a long time. Can you talk to us a little bit about the duration of your friendship with Joey?
Sure. And I will get choked up, so it may take me a little time to get through this. So
yeah, take all the time you need, buddy.
I met Joey in 1993. We were playing Little League baseball and everything. We were in junior high, and I got to, whenever we were playing together and hanging out and everything, one of my cousins that was tested was really good friends with Joey. So I had, we had kind of been around each other and everything, but playing baseball together, we really started spending a lot of time together. And they're just like two forces, that can be attracted to each other. So we became really good friends. A lot of the same movies we had liked, a lot of the same books and everything. Both athletic, both like hanging out and spending time together. Both, he's super hilarious and everything, just salt of the earth guy. And so because of those, that friendship there, we just slowly grew, moved through life together and everything, whether it was graduating high school together in 1999, almost a year or a little over a year before the wreck happened. And even at that time when Joey was, or after a year before, sorry. Even when I was in the hospital, Joey in the ICU was like, "Hey man, you may need a kidney transplant." Like the doctor was saying, "If you need one, I'm your guy." He said that for 14 years. And so it was really humbling to, to go through that experience. We went through to college together. He graduated before me because he had his life together. I was still trying to figure it out. And, we're in each other's weddings and would visit each other quite a bit. I'd moved down to Houston and he was still in East Texas. So we, would spend time together. We've done 5Ks, mud runs, all kinds of stuff together, canoeing trips.
Okay. I understand that you were transplanted on January 27th, 2015.
Yes, sir.
With Joey's kidney. Is that right?
That's right.
Right. And what hospital are we talking about?
Houston Methodist.
All right. And I also understand that your brand new Joey kidney started producing urine almost right away. They took the clip off and
yeah,
it was working.
They've got, they have to stop the blood flow and everything. So as soon as they got everything attached and unclamped, it started producing urine really quick. And I put out close to 1.25 liters, almost 1.5 liters within an hour as soon as they unclamped. So no issues. And where our ORs were, where I was and where Joey was, were adjoining. So his removal of the kidney, or the $5 word is nephrectomy. But whenever they were doing his, they started on Joey to take him out. They were wheeling me into the next room, and it had a door separating the two. So once they got the kidney out of Joey, flushed it and looked at it and everything, they brought it over to my OR room. The same doctor that flushed it and everything in there brought it over to mine, looked at it, they flushed it, threw it in me, and we woke up in the holding area, or the PACU, after the surgery and everything, and have labs and pictures from that.
I was going to say, I got a ton of pictures I'm going to show the folks after the broadcast today of you and Joey, and in particular after the transplant. Everybody looked happy and had thumbs up, as I remember.
Yes,
so that's
sir.
pretty cool.
It's so cool. I just have to say one thing. My favorite moment of being a living donor, social worker, and advocate was going into the room with the donor, recipient, or if it was a non-related, it was still going in and seeing them after. And the smile, the fact that the surgeon said you made urine, like there was nothing better. I don't think I ever had a dry eye. And that was after 15 years. So what you guys have all been through is so incredible. It should never be diminished. And that's why it's not even about like, oh, I work here. I just want this test to be popular because I work here. No, like these kidneys are so precious. These organs that you guys have received or have been donated, they're so precious. And your story sharing this, Shane, it's like, it gets me every time, even though I've heard it so many times. It's got to be honest.
Great.
I've said it a bunch, and it's still, for a little over 7.5 years, it still gets me every time. But, Joey, on some of the different videos and everything, where Joey and I are together, he talks about how good I looked the next day.
Yes.
Because he saw me get worse. I mean, go on dialysis, but, the next day, it's like, it looked like you again.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear you. I recall everyone saying that. They would say, you look like you did before. And going into the room, and I didn't see, many of the, like when you're on the donor side before, like I saw the recipients on the other side. But like when you hear people say, you look like you, I can't imagine what that feels like as the actual recipient.
Yeah.
It's like, you look different, and I would see it as a clinician, but for you to feel that way and your donor to see that, I mean, it's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable.
And this is why we fight so hard to keep our transplanted kidneys. This is why we need to know whether or not we're going through silent rejection.
Yes.
This is why we need to check with OmniGraf from TGI about whether or not we're having issues that cannot be detected with a blood test. Would that be a fair statement to make?
Absolutely.
100%. Everything we can do to protect, you're such precious organ. That's all I think about as a clinician. You guys have all been through so much. Like, look at Shane. And this is not us pretending. Like, this is how we've all felt. We've all seen it, felt it. You guys have felt it way more than me. But my goal is to, whatever I can do to protect this organ, let's do it. Reach out to us. Like, we want to find it before there's significant injury. Let's do it before there's anything detectable.
Okay. Let's talk about your 5th year kidney anniversary in 2020, Shane. It's my understanding that, kind of on a whim, you were doing cell-free DNA testing to find out what was going on with your transplant. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened?
Yeah, sure. I had done some training because I work as a heart transplant coordinator, and I can't use like OmniGraf specifically, but there's other tests out there that are very similar that I was familiar with and everything. So my physician, at my 5-year appointment, it was writing down some stuff, and I said, "Hey, can I?" And he was using that particular pen, and I said, "Hey, can I get one of those?" And he looked at me and looked at the pen and tried to hand me the pen. I said, "No, not the pen, the test. Can I get the cell-free DNA done?" And he looked at me. He's like, "Why? Everything looks perfect, Shane." I said, "I'm a nerd. Can we just look and see? It's not going to hurt anything. I may have to pay something out of pocket. I may not. Worst case scenario, everything is great. But, it'll give me a little peace of mind that, we haven't been checking a few things. So I know my creatinine is fine and my glow fill test and all these other factors, look fantastic. But, let's just look. Why not?" I said, "Okay, sure." So he agreed to have it done. And then we started to see a lot more things unravel.
What'd you find out?
Well, we found out that my cell-free DNA was really elevated. Less than 1%, is good. Typically, less than 0.12%. Typically, I know that's the numbers that we use in heart transplant for this specific test. Different from OmniGraf. We were looking at, my level was 6.2. And so that started to prompt other stuff, because he even called the company and argued with one of the physicians there, like, "There's no way this is right. His creatinine is perfect. His 24-hour urine clearance is perfect. His glow fill is perfect. Everything when you do an ultrasound of the new kidney, it will change on how it looks. It'll start to break down a little bit, and they can see that with an ultrasound." He says, "His is so perfect. Like, there's no way this is right." And they argued back and said, "No, it's right. You need to do more testing." So we did antibodies, which is similar to gene expression, kind of, where it's my body reacting to Joey's body and what happens there. And those tests came back elevated. Then the next step was, "Well, Shane, we need to do a biopsy." So in combination with the cell-free DNA, the antibodies, and the biopsy result that came back was questionable, they said, "This looks like this. It could be subacute clinical rejection, but you should do more testing." And my doctor said he had talked to the pathologist. He said, "We've already done that and it doesn't look good." And he's like, "Well, you should treat him then." So we moved forward with treatment for rejection.
Okay. I understand there were 2 rounds of treatment for rejection. How did it go?
The first round I did was in the hospital for almost a week. I decided to do it inpatient versus outpatient because I wanted to get it done how the transplant center that I had moved to, because again, I moved from the Houston area to the Dallas Fort Worth area. So I changed teams and everything. So the nephrologist that I had in Houston wasn't the same one that I had in Dallas. So I was with a new team. I'd been there for a couple of years, and everything, looked fine. They were comfortable. I was comfortable. But getting back to the story, we had chose to do the plasma exchange, which I talked about a little bit earlier, But similar to dialysis, they have to use the same type of catheter where they pull the blood out and pull out your plasma and put new plasma in, along with like a chemotherapy type agent, and then another medicine called IVIG. And all of the, in combination, what that does is the chemotherapy type agent lowers your immune system. The IVIG binds with those antibodies, which are in the plasma. So that's why they're pulling the plasma out and giving me new plasma, is to try to, get all of those antibody out to help bring down those rejection levels and everything, bring down the cell-free DNA, bring down, the antibodies that were in my bloodstream to help, prevent anything from happening. But again, my kidney function was picture perfect at the time.
Okay. Talk to us about Lauren Sumner and testing on TrueGraf and OmniGraf. What's going on with that currently?
Sure. A little story about Lauren. She used to work as a lung coordinator where I was working as a heart coordinator. And we had went out after work one day, a bunch of us, just to hang out and get to know some of the new people that were working. And lo and behold, she had, in small talk, hey, where are you from? And she said she was from Marshall. I am from Marshall. It's a very small town, about 24,000 people. So the circles are pretty close. And then when she said that, we just, became really good friends after that. And she had left the hospital that we were working at and transitioned over to TGI, where my first round of treatment in the hospital, she had brought me food. She had brought my mom food. She was, there to support, texting, calling, and everything, because she wanted to help her friend. We'll transition over to where she ended up leaving the hospital and starting to work for TGI. She was like, Shane, this test is really awesome. You should look at it. And it's different from the test that I was using before. So I read through. The science was sound. It made sense. It was better testing than what I was getting before. So I brought that to my doctor after my first round of treatment. And I suggested, like, hey, can we get this done? No. So after some badgering and everything over a couple appointments, he finally relented, and we started testing with OmniGraf and everything. So in that transition time of not having using the other tests and using the antibodies, we didn't have that gene expression part to it, where that was letting us know, hey, you really don't need any more treatment. So in between this time, it was a few months, I started my second round of treatment again with IVIG and another type of monoclonal antibody and called tocilizumab. And after that, I had some issues. I'd had some drop foot, some numbness in my feet and everything, a little neuropathy that has eventually gotten a lot better. I still have some numbness in a few places, but there's always a risk versus a reward. Treating for rejection isn't straightforward, and there's always going to be a complication associated with it. And you just can't throw a bunch of this type of medicine at somebody, and while you're trying to treat the rejection, you're also could potentially be hurting that person, because there's side effects with any medication, right? So because of all those answers, well, after the treatment, there wasn't a lot of movement in some of my antibodies and everything, but we started doing the OmniGraf and everything, and then that started providing more pieces of the puzzle to let us know, hey, you're good. Some of these other factors are happening. Yeah, your antibodies are higher than we typically want, but however, that's just a number, and that's one piece of the puzzle. We had another huge part of it that was showing I was doing well and I didn't need any more treatment. So we can just keep an eye on things, which helps me sleep at night, to be honest, to know that what we're doing, what I'm doing at home, what the team is doing, viewing me and everything, we're all on the same page, and we have all of this data to know he's doing okay. He's doing well. We don't need to throw more potential, harmful things at him. Even though we're treating him, it could still cause more problems, like I did, after the second round of treatment. So all those pieces of the puzzle let us know that I don't need any more treatment. I can sleep well at night. I get anxious right before, I have my test drawn. I'm waiting to hear, in a week or so from my team to know that the test came back great. But it's a huge peace of mind that I have, that I know that everything is okay. And I get to tell Joey the news.
Great, great. I read something that you said once, Shane. You said something to the effect of the peace of mind that you get from using OmniGraf is helpful because life doesn't stop.
That's right.
Can you explain that, please?
Sure. I'm going to start off with a quote. Joey and I'd mentioned and watched a lot of movies and everything. And our joint favorite movie is Shawshank Redemption. And here's a quote in there: "Get busy living or get busy dying." I'm a kidney patient, I'm a transplant patient, but that's not where the story begins and ends. I have a life outside, life is meant to be lived, forward motion. There's so much to do and see. And Joey gave him a part of himself so that I could move forward with my life. And we're able to do that, both as friends together and hang out and everything. But it's that motion, that movement of life that I'm able to do and have that piece of the puzzle to let me know I'm okay. I don't need more treatment. I don't need anything else. What I'm doing is working. What my team is doing is working. It's that forward motion that, it is so freeing, even though I went through something scary.
Excellent. Excellent. We're in the home stretch here, my friends. Let's start with Michelle. Are there any final remarks or statements you would like to make to our audience tonight before we close the conversation? Is there something I didn't cover that you think is important?
Honestly, I have to say you covered everything perfectly. And Shane, your story, it's the truth. It's what's reality. I just think people who aren't aware of different options and ways to surveil the health of your kidney, ask your doctor. They might not be aware of them. And I know we talked about it, but that for me is the biggest thing. 25% of stable kidney patients have silent rejection, and then that can lead to worse outcomes. So why not check it out? And again, I'm on the managed care liaison team. I also help with marketing. That's why I'm here tonight. But my main goal is to get you tested and get your get your test covered. So please reach out. We want to help you. At least give us a chance to give your organ, your new graft, the chance to survive as long as it possibly can. You deserve it. You've worked so hard. You've spent so many hours in the hospital. Your family has. I guess that's my final thought. Let's see how long we can keep this going healthy.
Excellent. Excellent. Shane, any final remarks or statements you'd like to make to our audience tonight before we close the conversation? Did I forget to discuss anything that you would like to bring up? Now's the time.
I will say this, as I had to do for myself, you're your own advocate. The worst thing that can happen is what happened to me. My physician said no. I didn't take no for an answer. I pushed until I got a yes. Because at the end of the day, it's not your doctor that's going through treatment with you. They're helping guide you, but they don't know how you feel. You have to advocate for yourself. If you're not feeling well, even before they do the testing, if you're having some issues, let the team know. If there's this test that you want to have done, like OmniGraf, ask for it. There's plenty of documentation. There's plenty of papers if you type in OmniGraf and stuff to help advocate for yourself. Because at the end of the day, you're taking the meds. You're going through the transplant process. You went through dialysis. You had all the struggles. At the end of the day, we're talking about you. So please ask for testing. Please do your due diligence. There is so much information that we have available at the click of a button. Please research. It's scary. Let's admit it. We're scared a lot of times of having this information, because if we have this information, it could change how we look at things and everything. That's okay. Don't be scared. Don't leave it up to your team to make all the decisions for you. Take that control back and do some things for yourself. I'm a transplant coordinator, and you see what I went through because we were resting on the laurels that everything was fine. Everything looked fine, but lo and behold, I had some problems brewing beneath the surface that we didn't catch. And luckily, I was able to be treated. My creatinine is still great. It runs between 1.2, 1.4. The other day I had it drawn and it was 1.2. It's me that's going through this. You should do the same for you. Do the research, ask for testing, take care of yourself, take your meds, wash your hands, all the things that the transplant coordinators tell you to do. But, in all reality, it's part of your life now, and moving forward with that. Yeah, you have to do some things a little bit different, but that's okay. You're here, you're not in the dialysis chair, you're moving forward, you're making those memories. And somebody else gave a part of themselves up for us. I'm lucky that, I know my donor. He's an amazing human. He just got back from Kenya doing some mission work. Wow. How do I honor him? Take care of myself. What else should I do? And it's that.
That's so well said, Shane. So well said. That sums it. And in my mind, that's exactly what it's all about.
Absolutely.
And we want to be here to support all the recipients, donors. Please reach out to us. I'm happy to take your own personal emails if any patient wants to reach out, and I'll connect you. I'm happy to do that. Please feel free.
Or if anybody has some specific questions, Jim, feel free to, if someone has something that they want to talk to me about, please share my email.
Okay, and I'll make sure I pass those along to Michelle. Just for the record, what is your email address?
So it's Michelle with 2 L's, Recendez, RECENDEZ, at Eurofins, which is EUROFINS-TGI.com.
Okay, Shane, your email address, please.
Shane, SHANE, the letter H is in horse, the letter B is in Bravo, the letter K is in kite, at Gmail.
Wow, that one's easy enough.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to thank you guys for coming on tonight and helping to educate us and raising awareness about silent rejection and OmniGraf. And wow, what a broadcast. I'm going to have fun passing this around. I will let you go. The only thing I have left to do is talk to our audience about some upcoming broadcasts. And I just wanted to say thank you. What a terrific job tonight. Just really stirring testimony from my good friends. I thank you so much for coming on and talking to us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
It's heartfelt from both of us. I know that. Just so you know that, everyone, it's heartfelt. It's genuine. We care.
Very good. You guys have a good night.
Thank you. You as well.
You as well. Good evening.
All
Thank
right.
you for having us.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye. Take care. Thank you, Michelle. All right. So great show tonight. You get a chance, pass this around, let people know. Interesting stuff. Some upcoming broadcasts that we have on the 23rd of September. Willie Blackwell, ex-NFL player, evangelist, is going to be on with us. He just got a transplant. We're going to talk to him about that. Kelsey Reed, medical nutritionist, on the 30th of September. She's going to come on and talk to us a little bit about CKD and medical nutrition. Dr. Sheenan Moe, MOA, on the 7th of October is going to talk about transplants in children. Dr. Christian Hanna. He's a pediatric physician from the Mayo Clinic. He's going to talk to us about PKD issues in children on October 14th. Our old friend, Risa Simon's going to come on the 21st of October. We're going to talk about a new app for kidney patients. It's pretty cool. I've been playing with it a little bit myself. On the 28th of October, Lainey Esquivel is going to come on. She's a PKD champions advocate. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with PKD and what we're advocating for in the champions group. In November, on the 4th, I have Allie Dawson wants to come on, tell his kidney story. On the 11th of November, we have Rachel Rusma. Rachel had a husband that had kidney cancer. We're going to talk about kidney cancer a little bit and her experiences as a caretaker. On the 18th of November, tentatively, fingers crossed, Teresa Diggs is going to come on with us. She's a heart transplant patient as well as a kidney transplant patient. Very interesting story, lots and lots to talk about. On the 2nd of December, Dr. Stenke is going to come on with us, Steinke. We're going to talk to him. On the 9th of December, we're going to talk to Christian McCall. I have an open date on the 16th, so if you're interested in doing a broadcast with your Uncle Jim, get a hold of me. We'll try to get something scheduled. I'm not doing broadcasts on Christmas Eve, the day after Thanksgiving, New Year's Eve, so we're going to get a little time off. But I will be trying to schedule some positions for you after the first of the year. Kidney cancer docs and PKD docs are what I have in mind. If you have a physician that you would like to recommend to your Uncle Jim, please let me know. So, okay, I want to thank everybody for watching, and you have a great evening. And we will be talking to you next week. So take care, and we'll talk very, very soon, okay? All right, a few photographs before we go. Shane and his donor. It's Michelle doing another webinar. Shane when he graduated from nursing. Shane and his donor again. Right after transplant. Right before transplant. Little graphic that TGI people made. Kind of cool. A little bit about OmniGraf. When the guys graduated from college. God, they look young there. A little more about OmniGraf. All those links are in the chat, by the way. And there's our friend Michelle. Who's that guy? A little bit about kidney solutions. And we thank everybody for watching this evening. I'll be sharing this broadcast. Make sure you pass it around. We'll talk soon, my friends.